Okay, the stream is switching over. If you're on YouTube, hit me up in the chat box so I know I can hear you. Okay, here's the agenda, issue 129. Same as usual. Testing and release updates. I'm a little bit behind. ETH Denver and then the related ETH Denver flu has set me back a little bit. So I am behind on getting that release out. That has some stuff that came out of the Lease Authority audit, which should be shared publicly very soon, as well as a bunch of little things that we've been catching, especially on the network side, the past few weeks. That should be out in the next few days, which should be that stable target, post-audit target we've been looking for. Along with that, I believe that Alex from TXRX has started or is starting on some fork choice tests, migrating some of the fork choice tests we've been working on from Java into the PySpec. So hopefully we can get some of that out soon. In addition to that, I did a huge pass on the testing to get basic testing in place for phase one, which also involved doing some fun stuff to get testing working across forks properly in many cases. That PR is up and should be in soon. I think that's primarily it. Proto, is there anything on your end?
Hello. So we have during ETH Denver, I continued work on the networking Ripple. With this thing, I hope to test clients' networking functionalities. So it has Discovery v5 and RPC as well now, working like latest version. Tested against Lighthouse as well. I'm still working on or testing if the compression of RPC works well. And it kind of relates to the OpenPR. We have this change in how we do compression with Snappy, from just object to framing. And since the networking call moved to next week, it may be a good idea to get after the call, talk with the networking people, and so this kind of feature makes it into the next release. That's about it.
Yeah, cool. I think generally people have not cared that much or have been positive in response to that. So I do want to get that out into the next release. But if you do feel strongly about it, now's the time, or after the call in that PR, if you want to speak up. And we don't have Mehdi, right?
Yeah, Mehdi's not around, but I can give an update on the Beacon Fuzz.
Yeah, cool.
We're interested.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so we recently published a blog post which kind of gives a lot of the progress update, which is on our website, and I'll link here after I finish just giving an overview of it. But I guess the main points are that we found an interesting bug, which is a deposit with an invalid Merkle proofs in Nimbus, which they patched pretty quickly. We've almost completed all the block processing state transition functions are covered in the Beacon fuzzing. I think the only things that are remaining are process RANDAO and process Eth1 data, but they should be done pretty quickly, definitely by the next update. We've successfully integrated Prism. We had to use kind of a fork of Go fuzz build, which allows us to use shared library compilation and symbolic linking. But that has some issues because Nimbus also uses Go in their Go wrapper around libp. So we expect to have Prism supported in the fuzzer in master, hopefully by next week. We've also improved some of the tooling so that we can programmatically generate corpus from the test repo, provided we give it a specific spec version, which helps us kind of build these things faster. We've got a better build process, so we've updated the make file. and the ongoing steps and current next steps is to start including the epoch state transitions, Java integration, and update to the Eth2 spec version 10.1.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
I just mentioned that I'm a little bit surprised that you're running to Go on the fuzzing side.
Yeah, is it
For
because
Nimbus, that is?
are you no longer wrapping libp2p using native nim?
Well, we are wrapping that, but is libp2p part of the fuzzing? It shouldn't be, right? Oh,
Yeah, I
whatever.
think the issue.
We can investigate.
Yeah, the issue is using multiple Go different libraries. So there are some issues.
It's just that we shouldn't have Go as a part of the normal build. We just have a daemon running, which is running as a standalone process. There's like the nim code shouldn't be tainted by Go. So I'm just a little bit surprised, but we can take it offline.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, there may be some other issues. Yeah, I'll talk to you after.
Cool. Any other testing updates? Okay. Client updates. I'd like to hear the details of what's been going on, but also with an eye for multi-client testnets in the coming month. I'd like to hear kind of the biggest bottleneck, what y'all are currently doing to address it, and also if we should be probably seeing some similar issues across clients. So if there are things to share or feedback to give each other, please chime in. And we can start with Teku.
Yep, I can speak for Teku. So we're making progress on sync. We're connecting to and downloading blocks from Prism Sapphire testnet. We haven't yet caught up to Chainhead. We're working through performance and reliability issues that are slowing us down, so there's more work to do. But exciting that we are downloading blocks from a live testnet. We've also been doing some work related to deposit processing. We should now be correctly processing pre and post Genesis deposits. We've done some work on the Discovery v5 implementation from Harmony to make integration with Teku easier. And we've confirmed it works well enough to discover nodes from Lighthouse. We've also been making progress on our REST APIs, focusing on APIs required by block explorers. And lastly, we've started working on an encrypted key store for local key management and also a standalone signing service for management of keys externally. As far as bottlenecks, one issue that we definitely need to address is storage. So we're kind of using an absurd amount of disk space right now. We haven't really started looking at optimizing this at all. So if people have ideas, that would be interesting. We floated some ideas around about maybe using a try-backed state storage so that we're sort of only storing diffs between states, or maybe like a state snapshot strategy where we only store like a few states and basically rebuild them as needed. If people have ideas about general storage schemas, we'd be interested. And Jim, if you're online, I think you had some issues related to Eth2.0 data management. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I'm online. One thing that like we've been having like problems that like we're like trying to like process deposits like efficiently. So like for that, like we want to just like use event logs instead of like just asking blocks and like getting deposits in them when like starting up like Teku. However, when we do that, like there's an issue of like being able to like miss a Genesis block, which might have like no deposits but an Eth1 timestamp. So that's kind of like an edge case that we've been working on for like the past week. But like I'm curious if any other clients have like thought about that scenario or like already fixed that. And if anybody has fixed it, I'd really appreciate it, like knowing how they did it. So basically, the issue is like just like getting deposit events and using deposit events, because otherwise like it's just like really inefficiently you're hitting like the ETH1 node for each block after your like contract deployment block basically, and being able to like start like trigger genesis on a block that doesn't have any deposit events due to its timestamp. Was that clear?
Yeah. So is it that the only blocks you're aware of are those with deposit events?
Yeah.
So that the ETH1 API is not available to give you just the existence of a block? The
It
existence
is.
of a block?
It like the existence of a block. You mean just like one block?
Right.
Yeah, it is definitely able to do that, but like in that scenario, like we would be asking for like basically each block after like the like ETH2 deposit contract deployment block,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like a very bad like way of like
Right.
getting like all like deposit events. So like there must be a better way to do it, I feel like.
I would definitely reach out to Paul after the call. I think he's been deepest in this.
Good idea. Thank you.
Any ideas for Meredith on reducing state size on disk?
Yes. Michael from Lighthouse, me. Just after SBC, we have been looking into state storage and how to reduce the storage size for Lighthouse. And we figured out that the validator registry is the biggest bottleneck. And you can take some hybrid approach here. So you don't do the full tree storage because it's much too detailed. You don't want to store binary nodes on disk all the time. What you can do is store the finalized state in a flat manner, and then whenever you load it into the state, convert it to a tree, and then just for the hot part of the state, you maintain these diffs of like a tree and store them as diffs instead. We can take that after the call with Michael and me.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Cool. Thank you. How about Trinity?
One sec before we move on.
Yeah.
Meredith, you mentioned you're implementing a separate signing interface. Can you speak to exactly what you're implementing there, or can you share a link to what that is?
Yeah, someone actually dropped me a link to an EAP. Let me see if I can find the actual specification.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll find it and I'll drop it in chat.
Yeah, so internally we're calling it ETH2 Signer as a standalone signing as a service. There is, if you look at the Pegasus Eng GitHub, there is ETH2 Signer repo, but it's just started just now. We haven't made a huge amount of progress just yet, but it would be good to get some common interfaces on this stuff if anyone else is interested.
Yeah, I agree. It would be really cool to have a common interface, particularly if you want to support HSMs for signing further down the line.
Yeah, back end and front end interfaces for sure.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, back to Trinity.
Trinity, yeah.
Hey everyone. Yeah, things have been a little slow. Mainly just working on spec updates. We have some work on stability of our pilot P2P library, updates to fork choice, and some integration with Milagro. And I really can't speak to bottlenecks like we've been discussing at the moment, but I imagine we'll have all the same issues everyone else is having.
Thanks. Nimbus.
Yes. So we have a lot of updates for the past 3 weeks. On the core spec side, so we are targeting 10.2. We created an auto detection and a report on skip test because we realized that when refactoring the repo, sometimes we forgot to re-enable tests, and sometimes they show up on fuzzing. So that's that should be catched up much earlier. We have our BLS signatures implementation ready. So far, we have been waiting for the new vector test vector fixes, but we'll go ahead next week because this is blocking or implementation of the honest validator spec, which is implemented, just except everything that touches BLS signatures. We are work in progress on attestation aggregation and fork choice. And also, so in the past, more than a year ago, we had a bounty program, and that was how we maintained the Eth2.0 at first. And we restarted this bounty program, and the first 2 bounties will be on improving test runners so that it can be used with Nimbus, and on an HTTPS server so that it can be used for collecting metrics, and for ETH2 API. Now, on the networking side, we have a new code to manage peer lifetime, so peer disconnected, peer that don't reply. We had a significant focus on discovery in the past 3 weeks. We have some issues on Windows, maybe on NAT traversal, and all of those issues manifest as finalization issues. On the LP2P front, we have excellent progress on noise, and we are now looking for interrupt testing candidate with our own native LP2P backend. On the speed side, we have implemented a lightweight stack traces, and this improves both compilation and runtime of our Nimbus by twice, because we enable stack traces and they take a significant toll on the binaries because they prevent lots of compiler optimization. So this is a very welcome improvement.
Nice.
On the DevOps side, we fixed our testnet deployment because we sometimes had nodes that were not reset every week, and that caused issue. And also, we have created a specialized infrastructure to test finalization issues because I talked about discovery that manifests as finalization issues, but also when we have speed issues, like we have too many nodes on the same machine, the way we detect that is by finalization, and we want to know if the finalization issues come from spec, from speed, or from networking. On Eth2.0, we are pleased to say that we pass all the transaction tests from Eth2.0, so the same one as Geth and Parity, and we are have EVMC implementation done, and that would allow host implementation done, and the next step is to allow fuzzing our own EVM implementation with the same tools as EVM1. In terms of bottleneck, one of the major bottleneck that we had is discovery, to be able to connect with other testnets without having to use some bootstrap nodes. And the other, it's a bottleneck more for testing and debugging. It's the log volume. Right now, we create about 80 megabytes per hour of compressed logs because we need some verbosity to debug. Assuming we grow to thousands or tens of thousands of nodes, it will be impossible to manage by hand to debug. So we will need some kind of parser to deal with all of those. And for the volume, we just rotate the logs every 4 hours to keep it manageable and not flood or AWS instances with logs.
Interesting. Thanks. On the fork choice that y'all are working on, are y'all working on a proto array, or what are y'all doing there?
So for fork choice, both one straight from the copy pasted from the spec and one implementation from proto array. And the idea is to make it almost an independent module so that it's easier to fuzz. And in terms of testing, we use the same approach as Lighthouse, which is to create some kind of interpreter that says, okay, push a block at that slot, push another block at that slot, now run process slots, and then now run the fork choice.
Gotcha. Anybody else running into issues with massive amounts of logs and writing a custom parser, and have any advice there or thoughts?
We kind of dump ours all into AWS and have AWS kind of consume them. So there's no fancy anything to kind of help there. But you did mention NAT traversal. I just wanted to ask what kind of NAT traversal techniques you're using.
It's a mini UPnP.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mami, could I ask a couple of quick questions? You mentioned spec v 0.10.2. This is not an official release, right? What do you mean by this?
Sorry, so it's 0.10.1. I was sure it was updated to 2.2, but maybe I was thinking of the spec that Danny was supposed to release.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
that's probably that.
On the BLS as well, again, you said you are waiting for test vectors and so on. Is this the current state of the BLS standard? Because we know it's going to change a little bit more, or did you implement the newer stuff as well?
No, it's the draft 5, so the one that is current, and the vectors I'm waiting for is the fast aggregate verify, because some of the test vectors are expecting wrong signatures, and they're actually correct.
Right.
It's the same problem that you raised.
Yeah, if you re-download the test repo, they're correct in the latest TarGZ. I mean, that confused me. Ours was cached, and Danny did an update but didn't change the version number on the test repo. So if you've cached it previously, they're wrong, but the latest version is correct.
Really? Because okay, I'll check it out.
I believe they're incorrect actually in the repo, in the code in the repo, in the files, but they're correct in the TarGZ associated with it, which was maybe a confusing decision to make on our end. It was certainly a confusing decision to make on our end. My apologies. Okay.
Speaking further on the BLS front, as was mentioned, there's there's a new PR on the #curve repo. So although we were supposed to have finalized BLS, there have been some complaints as to the efficiency of this, particularly on low power devices, amongst a few other things. So there's a new PR. I can link to it quickly. Open. It only affects the hash to base, which is now called hash to fields, which is the first part of the hashing into the curve. It should be a relatively minor change, and people seem very certain that this is the very final version. I think it's worthwhile making the change to try avoid a Ketchup v2. So I think provided until we launch mainnet, I think it's advisable to try make changes to follow the BLS spec. I do really think that this is the final one. Having spoken to the authors of these specs, but
And
yeah, that remains
what's
to be seen.
the next step in the process? Is there's another kind of quarterly meeting?
Yes, I would guess so. So nothing came up at the last quarterly meeting. There were no perceived issues, but this was something else realized internally.
Gotcha.
The quarterly meetings aren't when it's officially standardized. It's more just to bring it out into the public as a point to get feedback on all these kinds of changes. So I guess maybe this is a result of the last meeting in some weird roundabout way, but certainly was not the intention.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So you were talking about the hash2 curve being finalized, but regarding the BLS signature itself, which depends on hash2 curve and is a separate spec, how stable is it?
To the extent that I know, it is 100% stable. So there's one minor caveat to that. Well, two caveats, I guess. One is that there are still no test vectors. So I do expect it to change to add test vectors. As a part of some of the BLS precompile work I've been doing lately, we've generated some test vectors there. So maybe we can leverage those. The other thing which may change is if officially the spec or the draft expired for BLS, because there haven't been any changes to it for over a year now. So there would have to be, I think, a version bump. I'm not exactly familiar with the intricacies of versioning under these standards, but there will be a version bump. But I don't expect any changes on that front. At least they're none that from what I've heard, they're none on the horizon.
Thank you.
Cool, sure.
Okay, moving on. Prism.
Oh, hey guys. So yeah, we have a bunch of updates. So we are working on this slashes servers, which is to slash double votes, double test, and surrounding test. So the latest progress on that is that a beacon node was able to detect a surround vote, and then we were able to include the slashing object in a block. So the next thing to verify is that the slashing actually happened, and then the validator gets ejected. So we're working on that. I'm also working on a better state management service. So where that we store hot state, aka post finalized state, on a per epoch boundary interval, and then we basically do playback on that. And then a closed state, which is before the finalized checkpoint state on a per user defined interval. And such design was highly motivated by the Lighthouse design. So props to them for being the pioneer on that. And the implementation is mostly done. I'm just working on micro optimizations. Here's a few other tests we're working on. So we're working on a dynamic attestation subnet subscription. We're also working on better concurrent block fetching for syncing. And then we're also like thinking in the back of our head how to use less memory during initial syncing. And then we also updated the tester wait time from 1/3 to basically right away when it sees the block. And in terms of bottleneck, I would say our biggest bottleneck today is basically we subscribe to all the subnet for the committee ID. So we have tons of unaggregated signature to verify. I just took a profile before this call, and then looks like 30% of our runtime, which is verifying on aggregated signature. So like Danny said, that's not sustainable. So we're working towards solving that. Yeah, and that's my update.
Thanks, Terrence. And maybe Age can speak to that a little bit. I think he's also trying to tackle that hurdle right now. Okay, any comments for Prism? Cool. Another mind.
Just
okay,
if
go on.
yeah, if you're subscribed to all the subnets, what checks do you have for checking the attestations before repropagating them across custom sub?
We basically implement what's in the spec today, which I believe it does check the signature. Basically, checking the signature is it's the heaviest part. So the debate is whether you should check the signature, whether that you should check the signature before you repropagate. And I think we do check the signature today.
Which block do you use, or which state do you use to check the?
We use the target state, I believe.
Sorry, which one?
We use the target state, which is the epoch boundary state.
All right, cool.
For verifying signatures, are you already using Erumi's implementation?
We're not using the latest one. We're using the previous implementation. I think he has updated to version 10, which we're not incorporated yet.
Okay, never mind.
One more question, sorry.
Go on.
Out of curiosity, do you cache the state, like the epoch state somehow in memory, or do you load them from DB?
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear you. What was the question?
I was curious whether you cache the target epoch states or any epoch states, or do you always load them from DB before doing the checking?
So we have a FRU cache on top of the DB for the state. So those cache gets hit pretty often-ish, given this is a target state and we use it a lot. So yes, so yeah, it is cached.
All right, that's cool.
Anything else? Okay, never mind.
G'day guys, from sunny or not so sunny Brisbane. It's middle of the night. So we have our basically a libp2p from Mothra, a wrapper for that working in .NET, integrated into our Nethermind Eth2 beacon node, and so we can actually gossip blocks between a couple of local nodes. So we've got a thread of that working. We still only have blocks, no attestations implemented or anything yet, and still on version like 9.1 of the spec or something. But it's good to have to be able to use that Mothra library and not have to for as a quick leg up to get that started. So yep, next up is I think I'm going to try and update the version to 10.1 because the change in things like getting rid of signing root I think will make it easier to finish off the rest of the stuff like attestations.
Cool. Any particular bottlenecks worth discussing? Or just kind of grinding away?
I don't know. We're probably a bit behind other people. So I mean, although I did look, I'm not sure what like spec level other people are up to. Like I think the Prism testnet I was looking at still said it's 9.3 on the website, but I don't know if that's correct. So
Yeah, to confirm, we're still 9.3 on the test net, but then like our client actually runs 10.1. We just haven't updated the number yet.
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, I'm going to probably try and go for 10.1 because that seems to have some improvements over for the rest of the development. But we've got yeah, it'll be good to try and once I've got that in there, try and get it working with interop with one of the other clients. I know there's some guys from Eth2.0 locally in Brisbane, so that's probably going to be my target. But I'm happy to talk to some other people and try and get some interop working.
Cool. Thank you. Lighthouse.
Hey everyone. So I'll try and make it relatively quick. I guess first and foremost, we've added 2 new developers for Lighthouse. So welcome to Diva and Adam. I'm sure you guys will be hearing from them very short in the near future. So the things we've done over the past 2 weeks, we raised a 4K kind of testnet, validated testnet for Eth2.0, which turned out to be quite useful for some developers and researchers to prototype with. It's been running for about 93,000 slots, and we kind of haven't touched it. It's just running smoothly. We kind of just had it just as a kind of a test for the Eth2.0 hackathon. So whilst at Eth2.0, Michael from our team met up with Proto and implemented the Merkle tree-based storage system for validated field in the beacon state. It's shown pretty significant reductions in tree hashing time, but an increase during rewards and penalties. So we're still deciding whether to adopt the approach or not throughout the client. We did a project-wide sweep of temporary heap allocations because we were finding a whole heap of using a ridiculous amount of memory, more than what we needed. So we've actually reduced our memory footprint by about half again. So since the start of the month, we're down to about quarter of what we were originally using. We're still using a 2 to 4 gigabytes of RAM for a beacon node on a 100K validator testnet, but we still think we can probably get a little bit better than that. The RAM usage depends on how many validators are using the node's local API. The reduction of heap allocations and memory usage also gave us a 30% improvement in block processing in time, which is pretty good. So that'll also help our syncing speeds. And we're in the process of refactoring our BLS library so that at compile time, you can choose to whether use either the Milagro or the Harumi implementations. We're still trying to go through those to find out which is to actually benchmark which is faster. In terms of interoperability, so interoperability is very is kind of one of our main focuses in the very near future. The bottlenecks of getting there is that we're pretty much in the process of upgrading Lighthouse to what we're calling kind of version 0.2.0. And this is going to have pretty much be feature complete for mainnet launch. So that means it'll include the attestation aggregation strategy, noise, and snappy compression. So we pretty much have most of that implemented. There's still a bit of code to go, but we probably need to go into a fair amount of testing before we merge that to master. But once we have that merged into master, we will be ready to do interop with everybody, we assume. So as soon as we get that merged down, we're going to start up an interop testnet, which will be a long-lasting testnet that we hope other clients can join, but we'll also try and join other clients' testnets. So the first thing is just kind of finishing off the testing of that. And I guess the last thing is that we've kicked off a process to build a kind of like a UI front end for our validator client. And that's currently in like the research phase. So we'll probably be updating everyone as that kind of develops. Cheers.
Cool. Major bottlenecks? Other than everything.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah. I mean, we have actual performance bottlenecks. So this was the RAM that we've kind of been targeting. I think we've fixed and tracked down most of all of our deadlocks. In terms of actually just getting to an interop testnet and testing with other clients, it's just a matter of finishing off the last bit of code and then thoroughly testing it. internally before kind of releasing a testnet, because we don't really want to have a testnet and then realize, oh, we need to change something, then restart the testnet. So pretty much that.
Right. And you said that memory is scaling with the number of validators using the local API. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So the number of like local validators that are signing entities attached to a beacon node?
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're still tracking down why that's the case, why we're still getting memory fragmentation across there.
Okay.
But that seems to be the case.
Gotcha. Okay. And but you also have nodes that have thousands or tens of thousands of validators attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, that's probably not going to happen, but we still want
Yeah,
to.
yeah, cool.
we have that problem, yeah.
Okay. And can you give us any details on your strategy to find validators of particular attestation subnets given the ENR?
Yeah. So as I was saying on that thread, the original plan was just to pretty much when a validator kind of subscribes, we know in advance when it needs to subscribe to a subnet. So we've given ourselves kind of like an epoch leeway. So we know an epoch in advance which subnet we kind of need to subscribe to. So the initial plan is to use DISV5 and just kind of search for random peers and just try and when we'll only connect to ones that have the subnet in the ENR field. But failing that, if that's too slow or if that doesn't give us results, it'll be dependent on the number of nodes on the network that are validators versus the number of nodes just sitting there that aren't subscribed to any of the subnets. So the other solution, which is what Alex suggested, is to just crawl the DHD, which isn't too difficult, but it'll be a different kind of search where we kind of just ask all the peers, all the other peers that they know about that have this particular field in an ENR, and if you specify return me at least 3 of them, then the query hopefully shouldn't take too long. Definitely not at least an epoch, I imagine. So that's the second strategy if we need it.
Right.
Have you thought about the reorg happening right then?
Yeah, so if reorgs happen, the validator client will detect it because it kind of polls all the time for its duties, and so it will resend a subscription. So we have like a service that's looking after all these subscriptions on the beacon node, so it will update and realize that it'll change which subnets it needs to connect to. So if a reorg happens, it'll kind of readjust itself. We may have less time than an epoch in some circumstances, like if a validator just connects and it needs to, perform an attestation on the next slot. Well, in those circumstances, we're obviously not going to have enough time to track down peers. But in a long running scenario, we in principle should.
Mm. Something also to consider is that the attestation subnet subscriptions in ENRs are relatively stable on the order of a day. And so there's also the chance to kind of like pre-walk the DHT and have information that you think is correct and is very likely correct locked and loaded.
So when you say their order of a day, that's the random subscriptions you're talking about, right?
Correct. And those are the only ones that actually go into the ENR.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I believe what is specified
yeah,
doesn't say if you're just joining for that epoch worth of duties that I don't think you put it in your ENR. I believe.
Yeah, it will only be shortly subscribed.
Right.
Yes, that makes sense. So the idea is that as long as the whatever the constant is for the number of random subnets he's supposed to connect to should cover all the subnets.
Should cover all the subnets? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean it'll be statistical based on the number of peers. Like if you have, as long as there's at least 1,000 validators, then it shouldn't be too difficult to find those 1,000 validators across any subnet that you need. Right. But I guess we'll find that in practice.
Correct. Okay. Jem, did you have a question or thought for Lighthouse? I saw you unmute earlier.
Do you mean about like finding like the Genesis block efficiently?
No, I saw you unmute towards the end of when Age was speaking. I just wondered if
Oh,
you had.
I was curious like which like spec version you guys are like gonna go for your like testnet.
I think we'll be going for 10.1.
Cool, thank you.
Another quick thing is that we've implemented noise and we're testing that. So if Nimbus said they needed a testing partner to check out their noise, then we're happy to. That'd be interesting to interop with.
Great. Okay, Lodestar.
Hello. So past few weeks, let's see. So we've upgraded our BLS implementation to 10.x release, 10.1, I guess. And we've cut a new release of that. So based on Harumi's implementation compiled to WASM. Everything else in our repo is still kind of 0.9 level. We have some fork choice things that we're still upgrading, and our network, I'd say, is probably our bottleneck at this point. So we're adding, so we have a noise implementation that we're interoping with Go at the moment. I don't know exactly what the status is, so I don't want to offer us up as a testing partner, but that's in progress. And we have a PR open for Snappy compression. And we're going to begin working again on Disk V5. We're about halfway through, and we had stopped work for a while, and now we're going to get back to that. Some other things, we merged in this new SSC implementation that we had been working on for a while, and just merging it in, no changes, kind of sped up our state transition by roughly 10 to 100x, and then just lightly memoizing a few functions, sped it up another 10 to 100, and we'll probably stop there for now because we don't have like the best data to benchmark against. But I think once we start really syncing a bunch of blocks, we'll have something we can test against and take it a little further. We're also going to be working on fixing up our state management, similarly to how it was described by a few people earlier. We're going to store, we're going to kind of checkpoint historical states, and then have a more rich history of the recent states, but just kept in memory and sharing a lot of data between them. Yeah.
Cool. Any particular bottleneck you want to discuss?
Maybe Disk V5, but started some conversations in a few other channels, and I think we'll get that sorted.
Great. Congrats on the SSE and state transition boosts.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Other client updates or items? Great. Research updates. TXRX want to go?
Sure. Okay. So yeah, we were at East Denver, and we worked with Eth2.0. We made an EE. It's called Simple EE, kind of. That was just kind of like a rudimentary execution environment to see kind of like what some of the components are. And we're using that to kind of like inform some research. Our team also is helping Quilt with ease, and we made some updates to that just last week. And ease, if you're unfamiliar, is a truffle-like interface to help you build EEs. It's still it's still in a pretty rudimentary place, but it's going to be a fantastic tool going forward. We have 2 pending write-ups right now. One from Mikhail around a safety of an ETH1, ETH2 bridge, ETH1, ETH2 finality gadget, and that should be out. Like, if it's not out today, if it's not already out, it should be out today. And another write-up on Disk V5 from Alex is imminent. Yeah, we're just kind of making research progress right now. Oh, we did ETH2.2. Yeah, that was great. That's it for me.
Thank you. Proto has put together a draft phase 2 spec. If you want to take a look at that in the specs repo, it's PR open. Other research items you want to go over?
I can give a summary for the core team.
Great.
Sure. Will is currently on a plane. As this Ansgar. Yeah, we basically spent last week at SBC and had many productive discussions there and synced up with the other research teams. We shortly before SBC, we published the ETH research post on our vision for phase 2. If you guys want to have a look on that, that's basically all of our thoughts around phase 2. In our opinion, there are no real blockers left for phase 2. It's still a huge design space, but the approach that we plan on taking is to just basically take a minimal implementation, minimal phase 2 spec and implementation that we see, and that's basically also what Proto has started writing the specs on. They came from the same discussions around that there. And we want to shift our focus for now on implementing that, and with a target of having a minimal MVP version of a phase 2 implementation done, so that we can then iterate on that and compare it with other more involved research that's still to be done there. But yeah, our next few months will be mostly focused on getting this minimal phase 2 implemented. And then a few other small updates. Sam and I have been looking into this whole question around dynamic state access static state access. Some of you might have heard of that. It's this DSA SSA topic. Our current internal preference is to likely go with SSA for phase 2. We have been looking a little bit into feasibility there. I've been specifically looking at existing popular ETH1 projects to see how easily those similar use cases could be implemented in a SSA phase 2 world. That's looking great so far. And Sam has been working on, for the last few weeks, last 2 weeks specifically, on a so-called taint analysis tool for Solidity integration. So the idea here is to have a tool that it's basically doing an optimization pass over Yule, and it's checking contracts for DSA. So if we were to go with purely SSA, then we would need developer tooling around detecting DSA and basically, so that would just as any syntax checker, it would just highlight code parts of your code that use DSA patterns, so you can correct that or override this check if you really know what you're doing. That's really looking great so far as well. He has a write-up on ETH research on that, and that's basically done as an MVP for now. And I think we'll have a more comprehensive write-up on the whole SSA DSA topic as soon as we have a clear picture on all of the remaining questions there. And then as last update from our side, I mean, as Joseph already said, Matt and Johnny had a new release of the ETH tool. So that's the idea there is that it's core libraries for EE development, and we hope that will be really helpful for prototyping going forward. So we don't really have to implement all those things, state, account structure every single time we want to prototype a new EE. If you want to see a summary there, you can, Johnny post one on Twitter there. And I believe that's all from our side for now.
Awesome, great work.
So having had some quite a few discussions about the whole SSA versus DSA thing, also at SBC, it's a very interesting change, and I think it's definitely the right move, and simplifies a lot of the harder problems, or at least it's easier to come up with a solution. But it does mean changing the standard pattern, and this comes up with the tainting and whatever that Oscar was talking to. But I would just like to encourage people to stay up to date with this, because I think it's important that we get as many eyes as possible on whether this is a feasible direction to go on, to go towards, for how we do state in the future. From what we discussed, we couldn't see any major design patterns that are that we prevent by switching over to SSA. And certainly it's worth it for the simplifications that can be made. But yeah, I just would like to advise people to follow what's happening here, because I think it's an interesting design space, and it's important to fully understand the decisions we're making.
Thanks, Will. Other research updates? Okay, we will have a networking call on Wednesday, a week from yesterday. I pushed that, sorry about that. But are there any pressing networking items people want to bring up today?
I can just briefly mention the PR I pushed for segregating. Let's see now what I was doing. It was segregating attestation topics, not really all broadcast topics, by work version. It's a tiny little patch that allows running multiple networks on the same gossip circuit, sort of. So have a look at that one in case you haven't already.
Right. Thanks, Jessic. Okay, spec discussion, thoughts, comments, concerns, issues. Great. Closing comments, anything?
So who's going to be in Paris? Are we gonna have a get together for Eth2?
Hello, Xiaowei is here. I'm thinking about if we can have something on the March 6th, and there's a potential poll on the Eth2 Discord channel, the general channel, which I'm trying to check the people's opinion of having something on the 6th. And if you are interested in, please DM me, or just can give some signal on the Eth2 Discord. And I know that the Golly testnet team, they might want to have organizing some event. So the discussion is also on Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the ETHCC channel in the Discord if you want to coordinate more. Okay, anything else?
Also,
Yeah,
Eve London, guys. Eve London. So there is this hackathon in London this weekend. And I invite everyone who is around to co-work or just talk about the campaign.
I'll see you there, dude.
Okay. Anything else? Great. Keep up the good work. We'll do this call in 2 weeks. We'll do the networking call next week. And I got a lot of spec work to do, so I'm going to get to it. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.